You'd think it would be that simple. Sadly, many times it's not.
The wacky world of MultimediaJay.
As the name might suggest, Tuxedo has a bit of a RAM problem. It's true that the previous motherboard had flaky RAM sockets. Now we just plain have flaky RAM. This is the original 8 gigs that this machine used to run with back in 2010. Looks like some of it may have issues. First thing I need to do, though, is rule out anything on the computer itself that might help itself to the RAM, like integrated graphics that I'm not using. I don't think sound font memory would do this kind of damage. Look at this, 8 gigs, but only 4 gigs-ish is usable. This isn't 32-bit Windows last I checked, so... Nope, nothing exciting at all. This thing just hums away. Matter of fact, it's quieter than it used to be, since this thing used to have a stock cooler once upon a time. That X-Fi might be a source of concern, but the motherboard does not have any kind of integrated graphics whatsoever. No, seriously. 4 gigs of sound font memory, X-Fi? I don't think so. Something else is going on. Wonder why the hard drive keeps machine gunning like that. It only has games on it. This machine runs off of an SSD, and I already checked, there's no virtual memory assigned. It's kind of sad to see what this machine has been reduced to. I actually looked at some of my older videos of this machine, and yeah, it was supposed to be some kind of period piece, so to speak. Basically, the computer represents what the early 2010s had to offer in terms of performance, since it's a 1090T with a GTX 760 and whatnot. It's just sad, considering what this machine used to be. There's some really howling wind outside, too. Yeah, you can tell winter's here. This machine no longer wins on speed or on performance. The Dellasaurus embarrasses it on both, so trying to find a way to still use this thing is a bit of a challenge these days, apart from seeing what games it can still handle. Oh, that wasn't a howling wind, that was a leaf blower. 'Tis the season. Let's dry some laundry and see if we can drown out the neighbors. Okay, it's time to get our hands dirty and shut this thing down and mess with the RAM. See if we can get more of this RAM to actually show up as usable. This might get a tad tedious, but the extra space that's been freed up thanks to this new monitor will definitely come in handy today. Now here's something we couldn't do with the old setup. Definitely not enough room last go-round. Shoot, we can fire this thing up with it still laying here, punch everything in, and then check the thing with the mouse. Sad. These are crucial sticks. Pretty decent stuff. But now it's time to do some RAM flakiness testing. Let's see if the thing will boot with the first stick, and see how much it detects. Well, it's either going to boot or it's not going to boot. So let's get it to where it boots with 2 gigs, and then let's get it to boot to where it's 4 gigs, then 6 gigs, then 8 gigs. Oh my goodness, what a way to spend a Sunday afternoon. Let's also use the anti-static computer mat to cut down on the scratches to the case. Yeah, I should have thought of that earlier. Duh. It's Tuxedo. Who cares? 2 gigs! Do we get a postcode? Yes! Good. I was hoping I wouldn't have to take the fan off to get that stick to work. Let's see how much RAM we have when Windows comes up. Spoke too soon. It either restarts all by itself or it gets stuck on the boot screen. We're gonna have to do this the hard way. Time to get really risky. Passive cooling on the CPU. Shouldn't get too hot. Alright, let's try not to overheat this thing, although I think it will set off an alarm if it gets too hot. Slots 1 and 3. Should be 4 gigs with all 4 available. And no RAM errors. The CPU fan's up here, so I don't get an error that there's no CPU fan. Actually, we can tell how hot it's getting by how much that thing speeds up. I don't like the looks of this. Brand new motherboard. Now it's the RAM that's rubbish. 1 stick, 2 stick, red stick, blue stick. If I'm gonna do this, I might as well put the fan back on. I'm gonna try going in the other direction from right to left. This is not going to be a fun afternoon. By the way, for those who think I might have just killed the motherboard, here's proof that I didn't. No RAM! There's the postcode for no RAM. We continue. Actually, it looks like it tries to boot again after it beeps like crazy for the better part of half a minute. So if this thing isn't gonna work anymore, it definitely has a future as a nerd alarm clock if we time delay when the power goes to it and have it turn on when power's applied. Time to get up for work. Computer starts up with no RAM. Beep, 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 beep. Stick number 2, right side only. Oh, yeah, reapply power, of course. If RAM weren't so overpriced, I'd just buy a new set of RAM for the Dellasaurus and give this machine its RAM back. Nothing. Could always put the original 4 gigs from the Dellasaurus in here, but man, this stuff's dead? Or does it need to be installed in pairs? Computers, gotta love them. RAM stick number 3. Whirs, but no beep. Really? Tempted to get the Dellasaurus' original 4 gigs. Stick number 4 by itself. Thing is plugged in, right? Yep. Is it getting the right sort? Well, it should beep at the very least. Dellasaurus RAM. It only has 4 gigs now, but let's see here. Not as flaky. Something else I do have going for me, though, is those Crucial Sticks have lifetime warranties. Could always invoke that. Haven't had to invoke a RAM warranty in many, many years, but starts right up, no problems. Let's see how much of the RAM, well, let's start it up, then shut it down, then put the fan back on. Well, we can keep an eye on it with core temp or something. But let's see how much of the RAM is available out of the 4 gigs that are now installed. It looks like Windows didn't load correctly. Yeah, that's because I had the flakiest RAM in the West. Yeah, the flakiest RAM in the... Okay, those Don Knotts jokes are not going to work here. Or parodies, excuse me. It's Connecticut, for Pete's sake. Nope. Something's dreadfully wrong here. Unless this is specific to Windows 10 Pro to show you how much of your RAM is available after the system boots. Yeah. Let's try removing the sound card. Although I don't think sound font memory allocation is going to be doing anything here. Why didn't I think of this earlier? Duh.
Epic fail.
Alright, let's see how it goes. Now there's a little bit of processor cooling. It's just not hooked in yet. I gotta see if the flaky Crucial RAM's gonna work again. And then yank the sound card and see if there was 4 gigs of sound font memory. That can't be right. Well, it does boot up, so that's a start. What do we have for RAM? And this thing doesn't inch itself away from its own processor. Just testing it before I reattach it for good. Alright, now it's just plain messing with me. I am so tempted to nuke Windows 10 and just start over.
Epic fail.
No more sound card. Let's see what happens. Be nice if I could reattach the processor fan sometime this afternoon. Apparently nothing.
Epic fail.
This is the part where the Dellasaurus makes the temporary ultimate sacrifice and proves to me that I'm not completely nuts. 16 gigs, rip jaws, stuff in... I'm starting to like this RAM that's in protected shells and stuff, so you don't actually handle the stuff directly. Ooh, you just missed it. Cut the camera right as it beeped that the post was successful, and I see... Windows! Started right up. 16 gigs, but only 12 gigs is usable? Huh. Okay, just to know that I'm not nuts, it's Dellasaurus time. I actually got a postcode when I reinserted the RAM into the Dellasaurus. Busting out the Q-tips and the super strong alcohol revealed that there actually was a little bit of old school Nintendo style gray stuff on the connectors. A little bit of oxidation or something along those lines, but now we're back to 16 gigs. However, the Dellasaurus is running Windows 10 Home, the Refurbisher's Edition. So let's try giving the RAM that goes into Tuxedo the Nintendo treatment, so to speak. All things considered, it is still a great running retail conversion, and I'm seeing how far I can take this with just retail conversion parts, without upgrading anything. For those of you that have been curious why I didn't upgrade the power supply and why I'm still running a 1050 Ti in this thing. Okay, power's been reapplied, and the contacts on the RAM have been scrubbed. I think I'll be able to reattach the fan. Just for the heck of it though, one last round with it kind of blowing at an angle but not really attached. Just to see what comes up. Okay, it still says only half the RAM is in proper working order, and cross-referencing it to the task manager, 2 out of 4 gigs. So it's not what I thought it was earlier, and it's definitely not Windows Home versus Windows Pro. I think I may have to RMA this stuff. It does have a lifetime warranty, so... well, I guess I've learned my lesson about RAM where you just hold an outer casing as opposed to directly holding the sticks. Man. Tuxedo just isn't what it used to be. Okay, I've never been this happy to have 2 gigs of RAM. So this stick in slot 2 gives me 2 gigs with none of them unusable. Let's try and get it to 4. Next stick in slot 1, no go. Maybe I should keep track by stick number. Stick 1 has a home. Stick 2 in slot 1, no go. Stick 2 in slot 3, plays nice. Stick 3 in slot 1, good to go. Now, if stick 4 doesn't work in slot 4, darn it, Steam! We gotta figure out how we're gonna rotate all this stuff around. Tuxedo, 8 gigs of RAM, and it works. Finally! Good. About time this thing got back to somewhat working again. Now let's put everything back together, hook everything back up, and start getting ready to mess with some games on this thing. This old thing is finally showing its age, and I don't know if it's the processor, the graphics card, or both. Here's ESO in minimum mode. It looks like a PlayStation 2 game gone wrong, or something that wasn't meant to be played in HD. And even in minimum mode, I can't get this thing up to 60 FPS. So I gotta settle for this being a 1080-30 game. Whether that's because of the graphics card or what have you, I mean, we are 200 points in Nova Bench behind the Dellasaurus on this thing. 500 something as opposed to 500 something as opposed to 700 something, and of course Monolith's at 900 something, so quite a ways behind. But this is again that silent aging of technology that I've talked about before, where you don't really notice when technology does its job, only when it doesn't. So also worth noting, we have a much slower RAM speed. We're not doing DDR4 or even DDR3 1600. This is DDR3 1333 from 2010. So, old processor, old RAM, old graphics card from at least a couple of years ago, and basically that means we gotta play this game in 30 to 60 FPS instead of being able to get 60 through something. Well, I think that's enough playing around with Tuxedo. We'll do some hardware swapping or what have you, but really it doesn't compete on anything anymore. It doesn't compete on performance, and it doesn't compete on power efficiency. The Dellasaurus just took its place like nobody's business, and now it's just a grumpy old computer that I'm basically experimenting with as to what it can still do. I really don't know what to do with this thing at this point. Till next time, this is MultimediaJay, signing off. Thanks for stopping by.